Good morning. 65b. Going through all the proofs of why the Baitusim were wrong. That the day after Shabbos does not mean a Sunday, but it was a day after the first day of Pesach. So,
which is always after.
So let's do the last one again. We ended off yesterday. Rabbi Yehuda, so right in the middle of the page. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Nemar Shabbos Lamala. It says the word Shabbos when it comes to Pesach. The Nemar Shabbos Lamata by Shavuos. It says Shabbos also. So Ma Lahalan Regel, Utchilas Regel. Just like by Shavuos, Shabbos is mentioned. Shabbos is mentioned next to the holiday and the beginning of the holiday, Shavuos, so, because you're going to count Sheva Shabbos week starting to the beginning of the holiday. So too, so too, when it says Shabbos by Pesach, it's also referring to something which is next to and at the beginning of the holiday, which would only work if Shabbos means the first day of Pesach. If Shabbos would be on a Sunday in the middle of Pesach or after Pesach, so then it wouldn't be similar to Shavuos. Tanu Rabbana says, so this is one brisa with four opinions. Now we're going to have another brisa that's going to bring opinions, some very similar to this one. And then the Gemara is going to go through rejecting all of them except for two. So, Tanu Rabbana, Svartem Lachem. So it says you should count. Shetehei Sfira L'Kol Svartem is in the plural. So who should count? Every person should count. Then it says Mimachras HaShabbos. So it says Mimachras HaShabbos means Mimachras HaYantiv. The day after, not Saturday, the day after the first day of Pesach. Says the Gemara, Ein Ela L'Machras Shabbos, Bereshis. Maybe it refers to it as Shabbos, day after Shabbos, like Saturday, and it's referring to a Sunday. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Yehuda, he says, no, it can't be that. It has to be referring to the day of Pesach. How does he know that? Tispru Chamishim Yom. You should count 50 days. Kol Sfiros Sha'ata Sofer, Lo Yu Ela Chamishim Yom. All the countings you should do should be 50 days. Now, Rashi explains what it means is they should all be the same. The same 50 days every year. If you're going to have the day after Sunday, that's going to follow different times. It's going to be different every year, as they were about to say. V'im tomer mimachras bereshis, if it's going to be on means Sunday, so then pa'amim shata motzei chamishim v'achad, pa'amim shata motzei chamishim v'shnayim, chamishim v'shlosha, chamishim v'arba, chamishim v'chamishin v'shisha. You're going to have different countings, different days every year. One year will be 51, 52, 53, 54. So, for example, the assumption now is, and we're going to break the assumption later, that they'll have to be the same 50. Now, let's say Pesach, if Pesach falls out on a Shabbos, and if Pesach falls out on a Shabbos, so then everyone will agree that you start counting from the next day, which is a Sunday, then you count 50 days. Now, if that was the first year, let's say, that Pesach fell out on a Shabbos, you would count 50 days. Now, what would happen if the next year Pesach would be on a, let's say, Pesach fell on an Erev Shabbos. If Pesach fell on an Erev Shabbos, so then you would start counting according to them on a Sunday. So the year before, you would count from the second day of Pesach, and you count 50 days. Now you're counting from the third day of Pesach. It's going to be 51. And if Pesach will be on a Thursday, you start counting from the Sunday, it'll be 52. And Pesach on a Wednesday, you start counting on Sunday, it'll be 53. Pesach on a Tuesday, you start counting on Sunday, 54. So they wouldn't be equal. It would be the same 50 days. The Torah says count 50 days. So the assumption is that they have to be equal. That's the going assumption. Interesting where we got that from, but that's the assumption. Now, yeah. So that's that opinion. The next opinion in the Brisa, Rabbi Dovid ben Beseira Omer, Eino Tzarech, next page, That's unnecessary. Harehu Omer, Tisper Lach. The verse says you shall count. Sfira Teluya Bebezdin. It has to be, it says it in the singular, Tisper Lach, referring to not each person, but rather the Bezdin, the court, the judicial court. So it's a counting which is determined on the judicial court. Once again, Yom Tov is determined by the court. They have to sanctify the month, sanctify the new moon. So that's always dependent on the court. However, Shabbos is set in stone. That's not dependent on them. So Yatzta Shabbos British excluded as Sunday. Shesvirasa b'chol adam. So every person knows when Sunday is, but not every person can determine when the new moon is, and therefore when the holidays are. Next opinion says Rabbi Yossi Omer Mimachos Shabbos Mimachos Yontif. So Mimachos Shabbos means the day after Shabbos means the day after Yom Tov, meaning the second day of Pesach. Ata Omer Mimachos Yontif Einu Elu Mimachos Shabbos Brachos. You're telling me it means Yom Tov, maybe it means Sunday. So Amris V'chinamra Mimachos Shabbos Shebetocha Pesach. 1 second. If it's referring to Sunday, how do you know it's even referring to Pesach? It just says the day after Shabbos. Which Shabbos? Maybe Shabbos is your birthday. Maybe Shabbos is your anniversary. I don't know which Shabbos. V'chinamra Mimachos Shabbos Shebetocha Pesach. Who told you it was a Sunday in the middle of Pesach? Maybe it's a Sunday of somewhere in the middle of the year. The whole year is full of Sundays. So which Shabbos is always there? That's the second day of Yom Tov. Seyubadak Ezu Shabbos. And since that one's set in stone, so therefore that's going to be since if it was referring to a Sunday, which Sunday? If it's referring to the day after Pesach, there's only one time of the year that you have the second day of Pesach. So that's one. But he also said, Nemar Shabbos Lamad, Nemar Shabbos Lamala, just like earlier. It says both Shabbos by Pesach and by Shavuos. Malahal and regular Tchil, just like by Shavuos. When it says Shabbos, it's referring to something which is right next to and the beginning of the holiday. Avkan regular Tchil. So here, Shabbos referring to something which is next to and the beginning of the holiday, which would then refer to the second day of Pesach and not a random Sunday in the middle. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Kasavach Omer Sheish Yomim Tochal Matzos. It says for 6 days you should eat matzos. Vikasavach Omer Shivas Matzos Tochelu. For 7 days you should eat matzah. How do you have 6 days or 7 days? How does that make sense? Hakate. Which one is it? For how many days should I eat matzah? So matzah iyata yakola ochla. Shiva matzah that you're not able to have 7 days worth minachadash. That's from the new crop, because on the first day of Pesach you still can't eat from the new crop. So the 6 days of eating matzah is referring to the 6 days that you can eat from the new crop. So yeah, now, if you're going to wait the day after Shabbos referring to a Sunday, and then you go through the whole Omer procedure, then you're not going to be able to fulfill the verses which say 7 days and 6 days. It makes sense if the Omer is always on the second day of Pesach, that then it's permitted the new grain. You have 6 days of eating matzah from the new grain, 1 day not. But if the whole Omer starts after Shabbos, which means on a Sunday, let's say in the middle of Pesach, so then how would you fulfill the verse that for 6 days you could eat matzah? If Sunday is the 4th day of Pesach, then you only have 3 days to eat from the new crop. So that is his rebuttal. Fine. Now it says, continue to expound those verses. Miyom haviachem tispru. So it says that you should, from the day you bring the Omer, you shall count. Yachol yiktzor v'yavi. You would have thought that you have to reap and then bring. The Amasai Sheyirtze Yispor, but count whenever you want. Talmud Lomer, no. Mehachel Chermesh Bekama. From the beginning of when the sickle goes and cuts down the grain, Teichel Ispor, that's when you should start counting. So says Omar, Imehachel Chermesh Teichel Ispor. If it's from the beginning of the reaping that you're going to start counting, Yachol, you would have thought Yiktzor V'Yispor, reap, count, the Amos Ashir Tzayavi, and whenever you want, you can actually bring the sacrifice, bring the omer. Talmud lomer, no. Miyom haviechem, from the day you bring it. It depends on when you bring it. So one sec. Maybe you'd have thought if it just depended on when you bring it, you could reap and count and bring all in the daytime. Talmud lomar, sheva shabbosos, 7 weeks, timimos tihiena, have to be complete weeks. What does it mean, a complete week? We have to count 7 complete weeks. What does complete mean? Emasai ata motze sheva shabbosos timimos. When do we say you have 7 weeks that are complete? Bisman sha'ata maschel limanos mi be'erev. When you start counting from the evening time. So we know the day starts at nighttime, right? Last night was Rosh Chodesh. So you want to have 7 complete weeks. It means not only the daytime, but including the nighttime as well. As we do, we count at nighttime. So Yachol yiktzur v'yaspi v'yispor b'layla. Maybe reap and bring and count in the nighttime then. Talmud lomer, no. Miyom haviechem. From the, it has to be you bring it in the daytime. So ha ketzad, which one is it? Ktsira v'sfira b'layla. The reaping and counting will be at nighttime. The hava b'yom, and the bringing will be in the daytime. Okay. Okay. Now, Amar Rava says we just had 2 brisas, which have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first brisa, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 in the second brisa. So 8 opinions, some overlap, all refuting the idea that the day after Shabbos means a Sunday and not the second day of Pesach. So says Rava, Kulhu islahu pircha bar mitarti tanoi basrai. Bain b'masnisa kamaisa, bain b'masnisa basraisa. The last loop here says 8 opinions. So they're all rejected. There's a rejection to all of them, except for the 2 Tanaim, the 2 opinions in both the first brisa and in the second brisa. Yeah. So now let's see. So, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the very first one we had. That's really the 9th, really 9 opinions. What did he say? Rabbi Yochanan he answered that fool who asked foolishly. He answered him, and then he explained to him that it says you should count 50 days, and it says you should count 7 complete weeks. And to that, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, which one is it? Says it depends. If Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, and if Yom Tov falls out in the middle of Shabbos, right? That was our first opinion. Yeah, so meaning if you start counting, if it falls out that Pesach falls out on a Shabbos, and then Sunday you start counting, that's going to be 7 complete weeks. If it falls out in the middle of the week, and it's going to be just 50 days, not 7 full complete weeks. Yeah. Right. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that one verse implied days and one verse implied weeks. How did that make sense? If it's Shabbos, if Yom Tov falls out on a Sunday, you have 7 complete weeks. Sunday to Sunday, 7 times over. Falls out in the middle, you don't have Sunday to Sunday, but you have 50 days. That was the first rebuttal, that it has to be that Shabbos means, the day after Shabbos means on Yom Tov, not on Sunday. So, okay. So now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Dilma Kideh Abaye. Maybe you could reject him by saying that we go like Abaye. Damar Abaye, mitzvah lemimne yome, umitzvah lemimne shuye. Meaning those 2 verses, one that says count weeks and one that says count days, which Rabbi Yochanan thought was a contradiction. and therefore he had to answer that one's referring to counting always on the second day of Pesach. It just depended when Pesach falls out. You could go like Abaye. Abaye is of the opinion that when it says those two psukim, counting weeks and counting days, it means you have a mitzvah to count the days, the weeks, and a mitzvah to count the days. Separate mitzvahs. Well, a debate. When you have a phraseology like this, mitzvah lemimnei yomi mitzvah lemimnei shvuye, doesn't mean it's two separate mitzvahs. Maybe someone would say you have to make a blessing on the days and a blessing on the weeks. It's two separate mitzvahs. One is a mitzvah to count the days. One is a mitzvah to count the weeks. Or whenever you have two parts of a mitzvah, this phraseology is just telling you you have a mitzvah to fulfill each part of the mitzvah. Yeah. Mitzvah lemimnei yomi, mitzvah lemimnei shvuye. So that's the first way out of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's proof. Now, the next one on the list is Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer said, it says, Tispar loch, you shall count. It's a counting dependent on the Bezdin and not a counting dependent on each person. So Yom Tov is dependent on the court. Shabbos, a Sunday, regular Shabbos, is not dependent on the court. So it has to be that its accounting depends on Yom Tov, which would mean that Shabbos is referring to Pesach, and the day after Shabbos would be the second day of Pesach. So if that's your proof, Imad Rabbi Eliezer, the very Rabbi Yeshua said he was of the opinion that just like the new month is very clear because it follows the new moon, so too Shavuos has to be something which is very clear. One second. And therefore, it always has to come 50 days after the second day of Pesach. Yeah. So that was Rabbi Yeshua's opinion, that just like the new month is very clear, it comes when there's a new moon, so too Shavuos has to be very clear. It's only very clear if it comes exactly 50 days after the second day of Pesach. So those two opinions we're going to reject, because we're going to say, Mimai de b'yontif rishon kai, who says that in that calculation, Shavuos, Shabbos has to refer to the first day of Pesach. Maybe it could refer to the seventh day of Pesach. Dilma b'yom achron kai, that's also set in stone. Meaning, who told you that it has to be the day after the first day of Pesach? It could be the day after the seventh day of Pesach. That's also set in stone on the calendar, and it's something which depends on the court, on the Bezdin, because it's still Yom Tov. So, okay, so that's a rejection of that. The Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, les lehu pircha. Rabbi Yishmael was the one that said that we compare Shabbos in both places, that it says just like they both compare Shavuos to Pesach. Rabbi Shmuel is the one who said, he was the third opinion in that brisa we had, first brisa. He said that just like there's a comparison between the Omer on Pesach and the two breads on Shavuos, just like the two breads on Shavuos come at the beginning of a holiday, so too the Omer has to come at the beginning of the holiday, which only makes sense if Pesach's on the second day. Omer's on the second day of Pesach and not in the middle. And Rabbi Yehuda it said Shabbos in both places, just like that's right next to the beginning of the holiday by Shavuos. So too, it's right next to the beginning of the holiday by Pesach, and therefore it's going to refer to the beginning of Pesach, the second day. So those two, he says, don't have a rebuttal. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Okay. Now he's moved on to the second opinion of the second brisa, the beginning of our page, on the third line. So, Imad Rabbi Yossi said that it can't be referring to a Sunday, because which Sunday is it referring to? There's many Sundays in the year. To say it's referring to the second day of Pesach, that's only one. That's much more specific. So if that was your proof, Havamina Dilma Samishin Lebar Mehani Shisa, that if you're coming from Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, sorry, not this brisa, sorry. It was the first opinion in the second brisa. He says that it says you should count 50 days, that all the countings every year should be the same. That was his assumption. And the only way to have them always 50 and be the same is if every year you count the second day of Pesach. But if every year you count on a Sunday, you're going to have 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. So if that was your proof, so then Hava mina dilma chamishin lebar mehani shisa. Maybe it means 50 days aside from these 6 days of Pesach. So maybe you'll always count 50 days. It's just always going to come from the 7th day of Pesach or the day after the 7th day. So it's 50 excluding these. So you don't see a clear proof that it has to be referring to the second day of Pesach. All you see is that it has to be the same every year. So maybe it'll be the same starting from the end of Pesach. So that's rejected. Then Imid Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, who said Yom Tov. So once again, Mimai Yom Tov Rishon Kai, Dilma Yom Tov Achron Kai. Same thing. Maybe it's referring to the end of Pesach and not the beginning of Pesach. That's still something which depends on the court. Rabbi Yossi Nami Chazile Pircha behind the Kamar Od. And Rabbi Yossi in the second brisa, he also realized a rebuttal to his statement. So he said Va'od, that he compared Shabbos together to Shavuos, that each one, the Pesach to Shavuos, that each one it says Shabbos, and just like Shavuos, when it says Shabbos, it means the end of the 7th week, and then comes the festival. So too, when it says Shabbos by us, it's right next. It says it has to be in the beginning of the festival. So, which is one of the proofs that we have no rebuttal to. So even Rabbi Yossi realized that in his first proof, he's going to have a rebuttal, to which he said Ve'od. And furthermore. Okay. So at the end of the day, we have 9 total opinions of rebuttals to the Baitusim. According to Rava, except for really 2 or 3 opinions, the rest are not as ironclad. But 2 or 3 of them have no rebuttal, and therefore we still disprove the Baitusim. Okay. Now, Gufa, Amar Abaye, says Abaye, mitzvah lemimne yome, mitzvah lemimne shvuye. There's a mitzvah to count the days, and there's a mitzvah to count the weeks. Either it means there's 2 separate mitzvahs, or it means it's 2 parts of one mitzvah. Rabbanan, Debei Rav Ashi, Manu Yome, Umanu Shure. They would actually, the rest of the would count both the days and the weeks. Ameimar Mani Yome, Velo Mani Shvuye. He would only count the days, and he would not count the weeks. Why? Amar Zecher Le Miktashu. That what we're doing now is just a remembrance to what they did in the times of the temple. Since we don't have a temple, we're just doing it as a remembrance, and therefore, to remember it, it sounds like counting the days is enough, and we don't need to count the weeks. Since we don't have the actual Omer that we're bringing, therefore, it's only a Zecher LeMikdash, a remembrance of what stood back then, and therefore it's enough with the days. So 2 interesting notes about this. One is the simple understanding would be that what we do nowadays, counting, is only rabbinical because of Zecher LeMikdash, just a remembrance of what was when the temple stood. And that assumption would be that the counting is really dependent on the bringing of the Omer. And since nowadays we don't have the Omer, therefore the counting would be only rabbinic. But the Rambam happens to say that the counting is biblical. So you have to know how does he understand this Gemara. He owns that the counting is biblical. And number 2 is, if you're really patterning after, you remember what they did in the times of the temple, so why not count the weeks also? They counted both at the time of the temple, so why are you making this, your dumbing it down a notch and only counting the days, you should count the weeks as well. Okay, that is that. Now, more about the details of the process of how they brought the sacrifice. So, katzruhu, they would reap it, they would cut it off with the sickle. V'natsnu b'kupos, put in their baskets. Heviyuhu la'azara. Then they would bring it to the courtyard in the temple. They would burn it, torch it, toast it with fire. Why? Kidei lekayim bo mitzvahs koli. The Torah says you should toast it, so they would toast it. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim omrim, what they would do is bekanim ubekolchos choftinoso. They would say first, before they would torch it, they would toast it. They would first sort of beat it to the ground with like wet reeds and called some kind of tubes, and they would do this that it shouldn't get all. Yeah, they do it with soft pipes and soft reeds, so that it shouldn't ruin if you did it with hard ones, it would ruin the grain, and they don't want to ruin it. So they would first do that. So that's what the Chachamim hold. And then they would toast it. Okay. So they would the kind of a kolchos choftin so kidei shelo yisma'ich, that it shouldn't get all crushed. So nasnu abuv, they would put it into an abuv. Is a klina choshes. It's a bronze vessel. That's his name, avuv. The avuv haya menukav, and this vessel was perforated. It had holes in it. Kidei sheyehei haor sholit bekulu, in order that the fire should really be able to toast the whole thing. Then afterwards, shatchuhu be'azara, they would spread it out in the courtyard. The haruach minashavesbo, and then the wind would blow. The wind would blow it very well and remove, I guess, the parts that you don't want, and leave the greens that you do want there. So, and then afterwards, nasnu l'rechayim shel grusos, they would put into these mills, these bean mills, which these mills wouldn't ground super fine. They would be a little bit thicker. Yeah. Yeah, the problem was if you do super fine grinding, so then what would happen would be that all the residue of the outer shell would sort of go in with the fine flour. This way they did it a little bit less, so you could take out those shells. Okay, and then after the grinding, v'hotzi yomi menu isaron shehei menupa b'shalosh esrei napa, you would take out an isaron of flour, which was shumenupa b'shalosh esrei napa, which was sifted through with 13 sieves. Yeah, I mean, you put it through to get all the parts that you don't want. The hashar nifta, the rest of the grain, you would redeem. V'nechal l'chol adam, and any person will be able to eat it. So, phone call. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So now, anybody could eat it, but you're liable, v'chayev b'chala, to just like go, you take up chala, so, and you give to the Kohen, so to here you'd be liable in chala, upater mina meiser, and you'd be exempt from meiser. Rabbi Akiva, mechayev b'chala uve meisers. Rabbi Akiva would obligate to take off challah and to take off tithes. So he would not exempt you from the tithes. The The reason why you'd be exempt is because this is something which is belongs to the base of Mikdash, and it was finished off in the base of Mikdash, and things in the base of Mikdash are exempt from tithes, as we'll see coming up soon. So, Tana Rabbanan, we're going to interpret the verse now. It says some hard words in this verse by Sfiras Omer. The verse says Aviv. Aviv is referring to the beginning of the reaping season, or the reaping process. So Aviv, Ze Aviv. How do I translate Aviv? The beginning of the first of the harvest. Okay, the first of the harvest.
This means first of the harvest, which continues toasted on fire.
At the first of the harvest, maybe that's the choicest one. Yeah. So Aviv Ze Aviv. Kalui, when it says the word Kalui, it means Kali Be'esh. It means Kali Be'esh. It means Melamed Shayusol Mehavavin Osa Be'esh. Kidei Lekaim Bo Mitzvahs Kali Divrei Meir. Like our Mishnah, it would be Kali Be'esh, toast in the fire to fulfill the mitzvah of Kali. That's the opinion of Rav Meir. The Chachamim say, Ein or Lashon Kali, Ella Davar Acher. If they would actually toast in the fire, the word Kali would be the wrong word to use. Ein Lashon Kali, Ella Davar Kalil. The Kali really means it's something which is put into a vessel. Okay, so let's see. So really, Kollel is really referring to something else, meaning haketzad. What does it mean? Avov shel klayos hayasham. There is the first grain of the klayos. Klayos are the people that would sell klayos. They would sell the grains. How do they translate it?
Those who used by those who sell grains.
Yeah, they would sell parched grain. So what would you do? You take avov shel klayos, a pipe of parched grain. Hayasham, hayamenuka of kikvara. It was perforated like a sieve. Kadesh tehei haor sholetes bekula. So that in order that the fire should be able to toast it. So that's all it means. It doesn't mean that there's a mitzvah that you should go toast it. The rather kali means you should do it in a different way, which means you should put this tube on it.
You don't want it to burn.
So really, the kali is not going on the fire; it's going on the aviv. The aviv is referring to this aviv, this kind of tube, and it's a tube that people used that would sell klayos, that would sell the parched grain. So you should put it in there. So now, yeah. So aviv kalui geresh. So it says in the verse, Aviv kalui be'esh, and then it says geres. It says geres. Eini yodeya im aviv kalui im geres kalui. So is kalui referring, this word kalui, is it referring to aviv, the word before it, or the word after it, geres? Now, kishu omer be'esh, the word be'esh separates these two. So, hifsika inyan, it separates them, meaning that how they're going to geres is about the fine grinding.
First year should be toasted, or whether the coarsely ground flour should be toasted. That is, does the toasting take place before or after the ears are ground into the fire? When it stays over the fire between the terms toasted and coarsely ground, it divides the topic.
Right. So on the one hand, it says toasted.
Toasted.
So on the one hand, it means toasted. The word geres means to be a coarse flour. So what it means is that first you would
The first years has to be first years. The barley has to be toasted before the.
Yeah, okay, so you have this grain, and it says aviv kalui, the aish, and then geras. You have this, there's toasting and there's coarse flour. So you want to know this kalui, what does it go on? Does it go on aviv? And you should put it and grind and grind it first, or it goes on geras at the end of the verse, which means that only after you do you toast it before the grinding or after the grinding? So that's the question. So to that we say the word aish is in the middle, which separates it, which means that the word kalui, aviv kalui, is not going on the grinding, rather going on the toasting. So, 1 second. So therefore, the Chachamim basically say that you put this tube, an avuv shel klayos, and you put it in there. That's all it means. Kalui just means you put it in there, and you would put that over the fire, and then afterwards you would grind it. Okay. Then the verse says Carmel. So what does Carmel mean? It means Rach Umal. Has to be something which is soft and something which is crushable. So now, even in your hand, you could crush it. So now we're going to bring a number of examples where we have similar things. We have a word that can be broken up like this. V'chein hu omer, and similarly it says in Malachim, it says V'ish ba mibal. It says a man comes from Mibal Shalisha, from the place of Shalisha. V'yavel ish alokim lechem bikurim. He's going to bring to the man of God bread of bikurim, of the first grain. The esrim lechem sorim, and 20 breads of barley. The carmel bitziklono. So it has this word that sounds cryptic of tziklono. The yomer, and he's going to say tein la'am v'yochlu. So what does it mean bitziklono? So you should give to the nation and eat. Bitziklono is a combination of ba, should go v'yatziklanu, and pour for us, v'achalnu, and we're going to eat v'nave, and it'll be pleasant for us. So another example of a word that can be broken down into multiple words. Just like Carmel is rachumo, so too this word is broken down like that. The Omer also, it says in Mishlei, it says Nisalsa be'ahavim. So I think this is referring to about the Yetzer Hara is going to come and seduce you and make love to you. So what does it mean Nisalsa be'ahavim? You should be Nisalsa with your lovers. What does that mean? Nisalsa means nasa v'nasan. It's referring to Yetzer Hara, how it's going to seduce you. You should have a give and take with it. Vinala, and go up with it. Vinismach, and be joyous with it. And then vinischate be'ahavim. And then you should lower it down into your yeah, the word vinischate, I think it means to lower down and make love. That would be with the Yetzer Hara. He's telling you be careful what it's going to do to you. So you see this word nisalsa is that abbreviation. V'omer, and it says in Eov, knaf renonim ne'alsa. So same thing. It says no. It says by Eov, knaf renonim ne'alsa. No say. The ne'alsa means no say. You should. Before that.
Before that, it's a statement. He lowers itself to deposit the egg in the nest. For example, then it states, because you anxiously hurried on the road to close.
Yeah, that's next one. So knafran is also you should lower the eggs into the bed. No say olav and iskata. Let me see for 1 second. Yeah, the wing of the renanim bird is enjoyed, meaning a certain type of bird. So, okay, so that kinaf renanim ne'alsa means, what does ne'alsa mean? Enjoyed. It means no say it carries its eggs. It's ola, it ascends to its nest. And v'nischata, it lowers itself to deposit the egg in the nest. Right. And then the final one is ki yared haderech l'negdi, because you anxiously hurried on the road against it. What does Yeret mean? It means, this is referring to that the angel of Hashem tells Bilam that it blocked its path because he had gone to curse the Jews. So it says Yerasa was afraid, Rasa it saw, and Natcha it veered. That it veered. When Bilam's donkey saw blocking the way, so it veered off the path. Okay, we'll stop here.